There's a voice in your head that doesn't belong to you. It tells you you're not good enough. It questions your every move. It replays your mistakes like a broken record, each time louder, sharper, more cruel. You know that voice. You've lived with it. So have I. It's called the inner critic, and it's been hijacking our minds for far too long. But what if I told you it's not your enemy? The inner critic is not some demon lurking in the shadows of your soul. It's not a flaw. It's a survival strategy. It was built to protect you. But like an overprotective parent, it sometimes does more harm than good. The real danger isn't the critic itself. It's how unconsciously we let it run our lives. So let's do something radical today. Let's sit with that voice. Let's look it in the eye. Let's understand where it comes from, what it's afraid of, and how to transform it into something that serves us, not sabotages us. To understand the inner critic, we have to go back, way back. It doesn't start in adulthood or even adolescence. It starts in childhood. As children, we're sponges. We absorb not just words, but tones, not just actions, but silences. If we sensed that love was conditional, based on achievement, obedience, or perfection, we started to internalize a voice to monitor our behavior. That voice, which echoed the authority figures in our lives, whispered, "Don't mess up. Don't be too loud. Don't show weakness. Be perfect." Over time, those whispers became our inner monologue. This voice isn't original. It's inherited. Parents, teachers, caregivers, often unintentionally, install this voice in us, sometimes out of love, sometimes out of their fear. But what starts as guidance slowly mutates. It becomes harsh, merciless, demanding. And one day you wake up, and the harshest person in your life is no longer out there. It's in here. You might think, okay, but isn't self-criticism necessary? Doesn't it make us better? And yes, self-reflection is essential for growth. But there's a massive difference between self-awareness and self-attack. The inner critic doesn't help you grow, it paralyzes you. It doesn't push you forward, it holds you back, makes you doubt yourself, question your worth, and sabotage your joy. Most of us don't even realize how often this voice is active. It operates below awareness, like background noise. But if you start to pay attention, you'll notice it's always there. When you look in the mirror and sigh. When you second-guess your decisions. When you avoid taking risks because you're afraid of failing. That's the critic in action. Here's a truth that changed my life. The inner critic is not reality. It's a story, a script, and most importantly, it can be rewritten. But before we get to that, let's look at the forms this critic takes. It's not the same for everyone. For some, it's the perfectionist, never satisfied, always pushing, always moving the goalpost. For others, it's the underminer, whispering that you're not smart enough, talented enough, attractive enough. Sometimes it's the guilt tripper, weaponizing your past mistakes to shame you into submission. And then there's the destroyer, the one that tells you you'll never be anything, never be loved, never matter. These personas have one thing in common. They feed on fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of failure. Fear of being unworthy. But here's the twist. Fear is just a distorted form of care. The critic is trying to protect you from pain by preemptively attacking you. It says, if I hurt you first, then others can't hurt you worse. And for a time, it might even work. But over the years, this protection has become a prison. You stop taking risks. You silence your voice. You abandon your dreams. And all the while, the critic convinces you that you're doing it to stay safe. So, how do we dismantle it? Step 1 is awareness. You cannot fight an enemy you cannot see. You have to catch the voice in real time. Start asking yourself, whose voice is this? Where have I heard it before? Would I say this to someone I love? That last question is especially powerful because most of us speak to ourselves in ways we'd never speak to a friend. Step 2 is separation. You are not your inner critic. It's a part of you, but it is not the whole of you. Give it a name if you have to. Externalize it. Imagine it as a character, the anxious teacher, the critical parent, the perfectionist boss. This isn't to blame, but to witness, to create space between you and it. Step 3 is inquiry. Challenge the voice. Is what it's saying true? Where's the evidence? What would a wiser, kinder part of you say instead? This is where you start to build a new internal narrative, one rooted not in fear, but in compassion. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but I need that voice. If I'm too gentle with myself, I'll become lazy or weak. That's another trick of the critic. It pretends to be your motivator, but it's your jailer. True motivation doesn't come from fear, it comes from vision, from love, from meaning. You don't need to shame yourself into discipline. You can respect yourself in it. In my own life, dismantling the critic didn't mean silencing it completely. That's not realistic. What changed everything was learning to dialogue with it, to understand its fears, to thank it for trying to protect me, and then to lovingly tell it, I've got this now. Because the truth is, the critic is just one voice in your inner council. There are others, the encourager, the visionary, the nurturer, but those voices are often quiet. They've been drowned out, and it's time to let them speak again. If we don't heal the inner critic, we start projecting it outward. We judge others harshly. We become overly sensitive to feedback. We assume people see us the way we see ourselves. Our relationships suffer. Our self-expression withers. And worst of all, our dreams shrink to fit the prison our critic built for us. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you face the critic with compassion, it starts to transform. It becomes an ally, a kind of inner compass, no longer shouting, but gently guiding, no longer criticizing, but offering wisdom. To get there, though, we need to keep peeling back the layers. Because sometimes the critic is just the surface symptom of deeper wounds, wounds of abandonment, of not feeling seen, of being told, directly or indirectly, that we are not enough. And these wounds take time to heal, but they can heal. That healing begins not with fixing ourselves, but with seeing ourselves fully, gently, without judgment. But dismantling the inner critic doesn't mean silencing every voice of doubt. It means understanding where those voices come from and deciding which ones deserve to stay. It's about becoming the conscious gatekeeper of your inner dialogue, filtering out poison and letting truth through. Let's take a moment to consider what happens when you pause and observe your thoughts instead of identifying with them. That's where mindfulness becomes a weapon, not just a wellness trend. When a critical thought arises, you're not good enough, you'll never make it. Instead of reacting, you can simply notice it, label it. Ah, the inner critic again. This simple act creates psychological distance, and in that space, you reclaim power. But that's only the beginning. You can go further. One transformative technique is what psychologists call cognitive restructuring. Here's how it works. When the inner critic says, "You always fail at this," pause. Ask, is that objectively true? Where's the evidence? What would I say to a friend who made this mistake? This begins to rewire your default mental pathways. You replace automatic shame with curiosity and compassion. Over time, this changes your relationship with yourself. It may sound simple, but it's not easy. Your inner critic is persistent. It's had years of practice. But you now have awareness, and that's stronger than habit. Another powerful tool, writing letters to yourself. Yes, it sounds awkward at first, but the practice of self-compassionate journaling is one of the most effective ways to expose and reframe the inner critic. Write from the voice of the critic first. Let it speak. Pour it out on the page. Then, write a second letter from your wiser self, the part of you that knows better, that sees the bigger picture. What emerges is a dialogue that reveals how untrue the critic often is and how much healing is possible when you become your ally. And sometimes, the root of your inner critic lies not in your thoughts, but in your body. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk once said, "The body keeps the score." That self-loathing voice, it might not just be mental conditioning. It may be stored in your nervous system. That's why movement, breathwork, and somatic healing are often overlooked keys in quieting the inner critic. You can't just think your way out of shame. Sometimes you have to feel it and release it. There's another concept you need to meet, the internalized parent. Many people carry an echo of their caregivers within them. If you had a hypercritical parent or teacher, your inner critic might simply be their voice living on. And here's the scary part. Sometimes we continue the abuse ourselves, long after the source is gone. But you're not that child anymore. You can stop punishing yourself with punishment. You can learn to speak to yourself with the same gentleness you offer to a friend in pain. That's not weakness. That's a strength. That's maturity. Now, let's talk about identity. Many people build their entire self-image around being not good enough. It becomes familiar, safe even. Letting go of the inner critic can feel like a loss of identity. If I'm not the broken one, who am I? That's the scary part, but also the beautiful part. Because when you quiet the inner critic, you don't just remove pain, you make space for something new to emerge. A stronger voice, a more grounded presence, a deeper sense of self. You may even begin to hear the voice of intuition. Unlike the inner critic, which shouts, accuses, and attacks, intuition whispers. It doesn't speak in harsh judgments, but in quiet knowing. And the more you dismantle the inner critic, the more you make room for this voice to be heard. It's not about becoming blindly confident. It's about becoming authentic, owning your flaws, honoring your growth, and refusing to let self-hatred define your path. And here's something crucial. The inner critic thrives in isolation. The less we share, the more powerful it becomes. That's why speaking your truth out loud is a healing act. Whether in therapy, in a journal, or a trusted conversation, naming the voice takes away its power. Shame lives in the shadows. Bring it to the light, and it starts to dissolve. Still, the process isn't linear. You'll have days when the voice returns louder than ever. But now you'll recognize it. You'll greet it like an old ghost. And instead of reacting, you'll respond with presence, with intention, with power. So, how do we live beyond the inner critic? Start small. One moment at a time. One thought at a time. One decision is to treat yourself not as an enemy, but as someone worthy of care. Every time you do that, you're reprogramming your mind. You're reclaiming your soul. And here's the most paradoxical truth of all. The inner critic never goes away entirely. But that's okay. It's not about erasing the voice. It's about no longer obeying it, no longer letting it drive the car. You can hear the voice and still choose another path, a wiser path, a path where your worth isn't up for debate, a path where you no longer need to prove yourself to an invisible judge, a path where you build a life not out of fear, but out of love. So let me ask you this. What would your life look like if your inner critic weren't in charge? Take a moment. Think about it. Then, I invite you to share your experience in the comments. When did you first notice your inner critic? And what helps you soften its voice? Let's start a conversation that helps others feel less alone. And if this video resonated with you, if it helped you hear your voice a little more clearly, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Not just for more content, but to join a space where we grow deeper, not just louder. You are not your critic. You are the one who hears it. And that, my friend, makes all the difference.